before our audience revolts, I'm going to take some questions now. I'm going to start with you, sir. I saw you. I'm going to take 4. Please keep them very brief, because I'd like to do another 2 rounds of questions. So if you waffle, then other people don't get a chance. If there are people in the overflowing room who've got questions, we'll take 2 from that side now, after the 2 gentlemen have spoken. So make your way here if you've got questions from the overflow room. Sir?
So my questions are based on Comrade Nyembezi-Heita and also Comrade Kulukani. So I'll start with Kulukani, and Heita is going to add or take away 10, both of them. Whenever start, I don't mind.
All right.
Yeah. Mr. Basting, just be quickly, fast. The NDP, Comrade Kulukani, it looks like now is an idealistic thing, and that cannot be achievable or be achievable in a matter of time. So to it to be success, to be implemented, the sooner the better. Some of the things that it need to look at, like things that are so priorities for NDP, like creating of jobs, GDP growth, and the target must be 5% growth rate, whereby then you can create those million jobs, Not that we want to create jobs and so forth, we don't have a target, So 5% is still a pipe dream, for the NDP. Because what you must have a skilled labor force, train our people, and also attract investments, both locally and internationally. And lastly and finally, things that, the NDP, I've read the document, that they didn't go that much, about the strikes, I mean, for instance, if you go back from the platinum strikes, that tripled the economy. It was the longest strike ever seen in this country. 5 months, So there was no mechanism that, for future things like that, it can be addressed. My advice to you would be that, and you must tell Jeff.
Okay, is that...
Tell your boss, Jeff, that, advice to you is that, let them amend the labor laws, whereby, amending the labor laws, whereby one might say, if you go to strike, the workers themselves must ballot voting, secretly. That's number 1. 2, don't impose them. They strike, you are striking, let them decide by voting secretly. Secondly, there must be government and CCMA interference if the strike, that thing is being resolved. I mean, 5 months, it's a big... my comrade, doctor side, 5 months.
All right, sir,
it's like 50 years, no?
Sir, we're out of time. So I think he's noted your advice, and I'll get him to respond in a moment. Your turn, sir.
My name is Dale McKinley, and I'm an independent writer, researcher, activist. Nobody's addressed what I would consider to be the elephant in the room, which is the entire developmental model on which the NDP is based. Talk about pragmatism, Adam. It seems to me to be a completely unpragmatic developmental model, precisely because the entire basis is on the energy, minerals, industrial complex. It's an extractivist model. And what we've seen in China, I just came back from India, you have a dystopian developmentalism in these countries as a result of an extractivist model that is not ecologically sustainable, is not sustainable in human terms, and it's also, in terms of business, it's an extractivist capitalist model. Because what is happening in our country, besides extracting all the resources, which is destroying both the developmental possibilities, even though the growth will go, you talk about the children, our children benefiting. Well, what the legacy we're going to leave them is not going to be much at all. So you might have growth for the next 10 or 20 years, but what's going to be there is the developmental paradigm, and the foundation upon which it's based is going to collapse. So you talk about it's not an ideological question. What we need is an alternative developmental model, because what capital is doing at the moment is trying to have it both ways. They want to be able to extract both resources and extract capital. Most of the capital in this country is not being invested in this country, it's going out of the country. It's going straight out of the country, and then they tell us, you guys have got to moderate, you've got to be pragmatic. is the most unpragmatic thing to do. If you want a revolution in this country, continue that line, because that's exactly what's going to happen.
Thanks, Dale.
My name is Khonzi Mabotsa. I'm a student here at WITS and the chairperson of the Greater Kapa Bokone Community Trust. Nzike, these are the things that happen when there's no public consultation. The same issue with the e-toll. I'll go. Nzike, I think I'll go to the first point. One of the issues that you raised, you talked about business, you talked about labor, can't remember the third one, and the most important one that you failed to discuss is the community at the end of the day, who make the majority of the people. They were never consulted. There was a session which was called JAM, which lasted for about 72 hours, and you had to make your inputs online. That is one problem. We have the modern imperialists, who today's interests are protected by the decision makers. That is a problem. Number two, we have COSATU, which is managed today. It's a problem. It was our only voice, and now you cannot go to civil society because they are unorganized. And we are dealing with the same issue as the youth wage subsidy. And we cannot fall on black business to speak on our behalf because they are unorganized. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to get a response, then do the next round. Okay, it's a bit fair. Otherwise, I've actually realized that there's so many things raised. Let's get them out of the way. So wait there, don't go. As briefly as possible, let's deal with the three things that have been raised. Let's start with you.
Well, thank you for all the questions. And just to say that to the first question, I think was Monare, that there are obviously clear targets in the NDP, and the job that faces all of us is to find a way that takes us to those targets, find the right kinds of institutions, refine some of the institutions that we have, create institutions, by which I don't mean organizations, but I mean systems and policies and so on that will get us to the goals that we have set. And really just to say that we would welcome, obviously, suggestions about an alternative model of development. Part of why we agree and support this kind of debate is because we want to hear that. No, I'm pretty sure, and certainly from the Commission perspective, is we don't like the ship we're in, but we are also careful not to sink it. And that is the dilemma that we face. And so we would welcome ways in which we can improve on this ship, make it look better, make it move faster, make it share the spoils with everybody. All of what is being said here is absolutely important to South Africa moving forward. What we're trying to balance is fix this ship that is sailing on sea and not sink it with 52 million people sitting in it. There is a risk that some of the things that are being said here might do just that. But we're not going to sit here and grandstand. We're saying, let's talk about that. Let's talk about how do we address inequality. It is a problem. I do want to say that, by the way, Adam makes a point about how Brazil also used small businesses as one of the strategies. COSATU would disagree with that. Would say that, and in fact, it's one of the points about the NDP that they disagree with. So I'm saying let's not be selective. If we're going to look at the Latin American experience of how it managed to reduce inequality, it wasn't overnight, it was over a period of a decade. And all of the measures that are put forward here are absolutely critical. We have some elements of them. What was also central to all of the countries in Latin America in particular that have managed to reduce inequality was the importance of education, which managed over time to start to deal with inequality, employment inequality, wages inequality that persisted for a very, very long time. So, and this is part of what we're saying about education. We're saying education is absolutely critical to us achieving what we want to achieve. So let's not pick bits and pieces, because we need to work with all of the elements that will actually help reduce inequality. And there's a range.
I'll come to you.
Is there anything you want to pick up from what's been said?
Just
Actually, I don't think there was any question that was posed except Comrade Monaro.
yeah.
So I don't actually have a specific comment on the issues raised, except maybe just to pick up on the theme again of this issue of consultation and cutting a deal, as Adam very colorfully put it. If we go back to that analogy, in the business sector, you do try to cut the best deal that you can, but you also become quite honest when a deal can't be done, right? So the question as we speak here between the various parties is, well, if we never actually agree between business, COSATU, or organized labor and government, how to fix the structural flaws in the plan, what's the answer? Because essentially we have to move forward despite that. And I would really be very curious to hear from Neil what the answer is then.
Neil?
Fix it.
How?
You know, obviously you've got to identify what the problems are and then move forward. I mean, the thing is, government has a mandate based on the last 5 to 10 years, where it has its 5 key priorities, and it's said we're going to do the following things. The NDP unfortunately contradicts quite a number of those things. So the question is, does government get a mandate from business, or does it get a mandate from its constituency? We've had the problem that the government's elected by mainly working class communities, but it implements policies of the DA, economic policies of the DA. So I think this is the contestation that's been taking place. And post-Polokwane, Adam talks about it in his book. Post-Polokwane, there was a very important shift which took place in economic policy within the ANC, which became much more progressive. He calls it neo-Keynesian and so on. And we had the IPAP, the New Growth Path, etc. A lot of progress being made with the industrialization initiatives, the infrastructure initiatives, etc. But these are all fatally held back by inappropriate macroeconomic policies, which relates to Dale's point about the wrong development model, where the rest of the world was learning from the global economic crisis, learning the lessons. Even the IMF and the World Bank were saying, look, inflation targeting is a problem. They were saying capital control should be considered. They were saying all sorts of unorthodox things. Our own treasury acted as if the global economic crisis had never taken place. We also mustn't misrepresent what COSATU has been saying. On the issue of the jobs plan, we said, yes, the jobs plan in the NDP is completely flawed. It proposes that 90% of the 11 million jobs will come from small business based on the model of deregulation, of exempting small business from labor laws. We're saying that is a recipe for disaster. And that small businesses in Brazil are precisely what we're looking at. What they did with small businesses in Brazil was they formalized them, as Adam was saying. They gave them credit, but they also, as a quid pro quo, required that they paid taxes, that they implemented labor laws, that they implemented basic safety provisions, etc. That's exactly what we support. So we mustn't misrepresent what COSATU has been saying on those matters. And finally, you know, people have spoken about, I think Dale spoke about the fact that capital has flown out of the country, the fact that our domestic mining and finance sector are not prepared to invest in the productive sector of the economy. That we have this massive speculation on our markets. We now have currently, the estimate is 1.2 trillion sitting in companies' bank accounts. Your question of how do we channel investment can't just be a question of, you know, woolly notions of the rating agencies think we have the right type of policies. Because the rating agencies actually identified our problems better than we did many years ago. They said our critical problems are unemployment, levels of inequality. They didn't say it's problems of inflation. They didn't say it's problems of labor market rigidity. The critical problems are low levels of demand, high levels of interest rates, and these other issues. So it's actually how you deal with the problems of investment and industrialization then becomes the critical issue. And we believe that the NDP has the wrong strategy in terms of channeling investment and promoting industrialization.
All right, let's do another round. I'll come to you, Adam. I'm going to get in trouble. We'll start there, we'll go there, and there. Okay. Please be brief. Please.
I'll try to be brief.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm Mutsumi Maubani, and I'm from Nkangala District Municipality. For each and every plan, whether development plan or any other plan to move, you need to get the fundamentals right. Now, in this instance, the fundamentals are ownership. If the entire broad, front, it's not owning collectively the national development plan, it will frustrate implementation. We learned from the reconstruction and development plan that development is people-driven. You will not leave a section of society and say, I will pick and choose and go with those who are, represented well in the plan and implement. It becomes a recipe for disaster. Now, development happens in a particular space. If along your plans, I heard the presidency kept on saying, we have got elaborate plans and we could start implementing tomorrow. But they have not said, what are the plans? When do we start implementing them? How, where? All of those, essential ingredients for implementation. Now I'm saying the space in which development is happening in South Africa, it's local government. If you don't get local government right, if you don't make it an employer of choice, you will still have a plan stacking with the plan without a capacitated human capital that will be able to implement the national development plan. You must get local government right, and it starts at its resourcing. Resource it. Stop dumping people there. Let it not be a dumping place. Recruit correctly, meritly. Recruit graduates. Don't send failures to local government and think that you will get the country correct. You will not get it correct.
All right.
Because that's where things are happening.
All right, thank you, sir.
Now it's envy. Just in conclusion.
No, I'm sorry. I really am sorry, but I have to be quite strict.
This is very important.
No, I know it's important. We can talk about it afterwards. I promise you, and I'll get them to sit down and listen to the very important thing you need to say.
Okay, thank you.
But we can't do it now. Your turn.
No, I'm Graham Bloch. I'm from the Wits School of Governance. I wanted to just talk about some gaps in the panel. Kulakani says that government is going to do everything. He misleads the fact that this audience and everyone in the world is very skeptical about government. So just acknowledge that government can't do it all. Adam talks about the role. He doesn't talk about skilled people. He talks about Brazil. I thought they just had the World Cup, which was a problem. They've done 15 years of good stuff. But you know what? Now they're running into trouble. So Brazil is not a good example. And COSATU itself. You talk about radical economic shifts. Where is this in COSATU? And how has COSATU won over this society to a radical economic shift? It hasn't defined it. It hasn't won over anybody in society apart from strikes. And strikes, you can't even get AMCU and NUM together. So how are you going to get the whole of society together around a radical? So the only person who's made sense is Ms. Heita Nyembezi, who speaks about more openness. And thank God she's not talking about Business Day. She's talking about more openness and more discussion from the audience. Thank you.
Thanks.
TK Boy.
TK.
I'm a policy analyst. As I said, we should have started with what the NDP is not, and what it's not is a plan. It's ambition. And you can see it in the way it's always addressed, that we aim to do this, the plan. In planning policy, we call that the first stage. So we're still at the first stage. We're still at the stage where you're telling us where we're going. We're good. It's nice to know we're going to be at 2030. It's an ambition. Because if it was a plan, you would have explained to us the methodology of saying, why do we have 34 ministries? And most of these ministries, my counting was between 20 and 24 of these ministries have got economic development policy making units within them. And each year they produce. Why is that? Now, had we been smart about this, I'm not saying you're dumb, because you guys are very smart. Had we been smart about this, we would have, as I was saying, I'm a scholar as well. We would have seen that Singapore or China have only got 4 economic ministry producing, all these ministries in Singapore and China. China has 5 and 6, and these ministries' job is just to look after economic development planning. Why did we not look at our own ministries and say, what do we need to cut on? Instead, what we did is we inflated and we increased. So no wonder business is confused. Who do I go to? And now it goes back to the issue of local government. You never even gave us a scenario of saying, what if this is a City of Joburg's 2040 plan, if it's the City of Cape Town or Citibank's District 2040 plan, where does the NDP fit into that? What you basically have said, I think you've even missed the point that we have in Chapter 7, we've got cooperative government, and each sphere of government is unique in itself. Yes, they are unitary, but each plays a specific role. And if our NDA, ambition, did not get that, it worries me, because we're going to be in the same, because we've basically been stuck doing the same thing 10 years, 20 years. I might be wrong for saying this to COSATU, say what you like about former President Mbeki and Gear, but heck, at least he put down what the plan was, what the targets were. And my last point, and I know this is going to be controversial, so please take this in the right way, audience. If you really, I know you said we shouldn't take outside examples, and I get that. We should look at Namibia and structures. But the most successful plan in this country, which was morally and apparently wrong, was apartheid. And we never looked at how Verwoerd at a policy level did things. I think had we actually looked, I know it's very hard to say unemotionally, as a plan, because my job as a policy analyst, I look at things unemotionally. Where there's emotion, I admit that I wrote emotionally. But we never looked at it and said, look, how is it that these so-and-so people got this right? And where have we gone wrong? Because I think we really just need to go to the basics and say, look, does this mean that we have to change our constitution so that our national governing policy has more say in how local government runs or not? Because we really are not going anywhere.
All right, I'm going to take 3 more. Is that okay? Yeah. Then I'll take the last 3, and then in your responses, your closing statements as well. Okay. I'm going to go there. In fact, the 3 people that are standing are my last 3 people. 1, 2, 3. So let me start with you.
Okay, my name is Silas Mukwele. I come from the mining sector, but I left to become an entrepreneur, and I aspire to become a businessman. And what we see in the National Development Plan is going to have major implication to our society for many generations to come. And I don't know why the government is becoming so impatient and it wants to force it on our society. There are major groups and so associations that disagree with it. And they don't want to listen. They want to implement it now. And now in the next 5 years, on 2030, we must have a new plan again. We can't afford that. When we wanted to be liberated, we wanted a new constitution. We had the CODESA. Everyone was there. That's why we're having this democracy we are having now. Why can't we get all the associations that disagree with the NDP? We have a similar CODESA because that was a winning formula. Use that so that we can rally behind this plan to be successful. We had the Rugby World Cup. We rallied behind that team, we won the World Cup. We rallied behind the Bafana to win the African Nations Cup.
They won the 1 year.
They won it.
We won the 1 year.
But it's exactly the same thing that we must have to ensure that we need to rally behind a plan that we've agreed as a society. And we are not doing that in this one. And as for COSATU, you used to become the voice of the voiceless, of the workers, but it is disintegrated. We appeal to COSATU to take the lead, and also for the ANC to stop the arrogance. We need you. The society is crying, and the country is falling apart, but we've got leaders that are there that are not leading. We can't afford that. Let's fix it. Let us not rush it. Let's have the CODESA on the NDP so that we can move it forward.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Silas.
John Hodgson. I work in education trying to do some of the things the NDP says. And for that reason, I want to say thank you to Kulakani and the others in the Secretariat, a couple of whom I know, for the work that's been done, which I think is hard work and good work, despite the criticisms that have been raised about the plan, fundamental criticisms. But I want to say it's really frustrating to aspire to do that kind of work yourself and then see the way government behaves. And so my question's not to Kulakani or to government. My question is, you only get people to cut a deal when they feel the need to cut a deal. You have people here saying, well, maybe you decide that we can't cut a deal, so we're not going to. That's not an acceptable answer for the country. Just not. The question is, people need to feel that they can get something. They need to feel sufficient interdependence. And the more unequal the country gets, the less interdependence they feel and the less need they feel to cut a deal. That's the political problem with inequality. So what do we need to do, short of what's happening in the mining sector, for example? Not that that's good, but maybe you say that makes mining bosses think differently. What do we need to do short of putting people in a room with Adam so he can browbeat them as CEOs if they're not in jail? What do the rest of us need to do to show big business and CEOs that they actually have some stake in this and there's some reason for them to cut a deal? Because right now all I see is people continuing to say we'll go with the best of the worst case because we're well off and the people who suffer day to day are not us. So I don't see us getting a deal without being smarter about what we do to cause that, because it's certainly not going to come from number one.
Thank you. Final question.
My name is Lusanda Pepeta and I'm from Supreme Educational College. My question to Mr. Ngu is has the government included the public to the decisions or the plans that have been made? Because in some point you would find that the people would get surprised when they have to adapt to the change of the plans. That's the question I want to pose to Mr. Ngu. Thank you.